Daniel had always thought of his home as too quiet. Ever since Emma passed away 3 years ago, silence had become the one sound he could never escape. Even laughter from his little girl, Lily, seemed to fade too fast, like it was afraid to stay for long. Most evenings were the same. Dinner at 6, a cartoon before bed, and Lily's soft voice saying goodnight, Daddy, before she disappeared into her pink, fairy-lit room. But tonight felt different. The clock ticked softly past 9 when Daniel heard something, a faint murmur coming from the hallway. He froze halfway through cleaning the dishes. At first, he thought Lily was talking to herself again, the way kids sometimes did before sleep. But then came a pause, and a whisper that didn't sound like her at all. He frowned, drying his hands and stepping quietly toward her room. The light under her door glowed warm, flickering slightly from the little nightlight shaped like a star. And then, he heard her again. Okay, I'll tell Daddy tomorrow, Lily's voice said softly. A beat of silence followed. Then she giggled. You're funny, Mommy. Daniel's breath caught. For a moment, the air in the hall felt colder. He gripped the door frame, heart pounding, a soundless ache rising from somewhere deep inside. He hadn't heard that word, Mommy, in a long time. Lily rarely said it anymore. He pushed the door open slightly, just enough to see. Lily sat cross-legged on her bed, her stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm, facing the empty corner of the room. She smiled as if someone were there, listening. Daniel's voice came out hoarse. Lily. She turned quickly, her little face glowing in the soft light. Oh, Daddy, she said, smiling big. I was just talking to Mommy. Daniel froze. For a moment, his mind went blank. No words, no thoughts, just the low hum of disbelief. He tried to smile. Oh, sweetheart. You mean, you were pretending. Lily tilted her head. No, she was right there. She pointed to the corner. She said you looked tired again. Something in his chest twisted painfully. He looked at the empty corner, the soft glow of the nightlight, the faint shimmer of the toys she'd lined up neatly along the wall, and all he saw was still air. Daniel knelt beside the bed, brushing her hair back gently. Baby, Mommy's not here anymore, he said softly. Remember? She's in heaven now. Lily nodded, as if she understood something he didn't. I know, Daddy, but she still comes to talk sometimes. She said she misses you. Daniel swallowed hard, trying to steady his voice. Oh, she said that. Uh-huh. Lily smiled again, her small hand touching his cheek. She said not to be sad when you look at her pictures. She said she's okay now. A lump formed in his throat. For the first time in a long time, he didn't know what to say. He kissed her forehead and whispered, Good night, my angel. When he turned off the light and stepped into the hallway, he lingered there for a moment, eyes unfocused, heart full of a strange warmth mixed with fear. He could still hear Lily's little voice inside, humming the lullaby Emma used to sing. He hadn't sung that song since the funeral. That night, Daniel didn't sleep. He sat by the living room window, the glow from the street lights stretching across the floor like long, quiet ghosts. Was it just a child's imagination? Or was there something else? He tried to convince himself it was normal, that Lily had just remembered a mother and created an imaginary friend to fill that space. But deep down, something about the way she said she misses you refused to leave his mind. And when he finally got up to turn off the lights, he glanced toward the hallway and saw Lily's door slightly ajar, her nightlight still glowing. He could have sworn he heard a whisper, faint, almost musical, like a woman's voice singing softly from inside. The next morning felt like any other. The sun came through the kitchen window, spilling gold over the worn wooden table where Daniel was pouring cereal for Lily. He tried to hum something cheerful, but it came out hollow, the sound not quite reaching the corners of the room. Lily patted and wearing her favorite sky-blue pajamas, her stuffed rabbit dangling from one arm. Good morning, Daddy, she chirped, her hair a soft, sleepy mess. Morning, sweetheart, he said, forcing a smile. Sleep okay? She nodded eagerly. Uh-huh. Mommy said you should eat more breakfast today. You forget a lot. The spoon froze halfway to Daniel's mouth. He blinked, looking at her, at the way she said it so easily, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Mommy said that?" he asked quietly. Lily took her seat, legs swinging. "Yep. She was in my room when I woke up. She sat on the edge of my bed. I told her I missed her dress with the flowers, and she said she wears it sometimes so I don't forget." Daniel stared for a long moment. The cereal went soggy in his bowl. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He'd packed away that dress months ago, the yellow one with small white petals embroidered across the hem. Emma had worn it the last summer they went to the lake together. He'd folded it carefully, put it in a storage box in the attic. "Sweetheart," he said gently, "Mommy's not here. Maybe you were dreaming." Lily shrugged. Maybe, but she was warm. Daniel's breath caught. He didn't answer after that. Instead, he cleared the table, packed her school lunch, and watched her run out to the car, her little shoes tapping rhythmically against the floor. But all through the drive, her words clung to him like static. She was warm. The house was quieter after he dropped her off. Too quiet. Daniel decided to distract himself. He had work reports to finish, bills to sort, laundry that had piled up again. But the stillness of the house seemed to hum in his ears. Around noon, as he was folding a towel in the laundry room, something made him stop. A soft floral scent drifted past him, light and familiar. Lavender. He closed his eyes for a second, heart thudding. That was Emma's scent. The same lavender oil she'd always dabbed behind her ears. He opened his eyes again. The air was still, dust motes swirling lazily through the sunbeam cutting across the room. Nothing had moved. No candle. No perfume. Nothing. Daniel laughed quietly to himself, shaking his head. "Get a grip," he muttered. "You're just missing her." He returned to his work, but deep down, the feeling lingered, as if someone had walked just behind him, brushing against his shoulder. That evening, Lily came home from school chattering about her day, a spelling test, a new friend named Abby, and how her teacher said she drew the prettiest sky in class. But then, as she unpacked her backpack, something small slipped out and fluttered to the floor. A drawing. Daniel bent to pick it up. It showed 3 stick figures, one big, one small, and one taller figure with long hair drawn in yellow crayon. Across the top, in crooked letters, Lily had written, "Me, Daddy, and Mommy playing outside." He smiled faintly, until he noticed something else, a small note written in a neater, almost older hand at the bottom. "Tell Daddy I'm proud of him." Daniel froze. The handwriting wasn't Lily's. It wasn't blocky or uneven. It flowed smoothly, curving just the way Emma used to write. His heart raced. "Lily," he asked, trying to sound calm, "who wrote this?" She looked up, chewing on her pencil. "Mommy did. I told her I wanted to draw all of us, and she helped me write." Daniel swallowed hard, staring at the page. The ink looked too perfect, not smudged, not shaky. He wanted to believe it was a coincidence. Maybe Lily had copied something she'd seen before. Maybe, but the handwriting, it was the same. Exactly the same. That night, after Lily went to sleep, Daniel took out an old box from the attic, the one with Emma's journals, cards, and that yellow dress. He pulled out one of the notes she'd left him years ago. "Don't forget to breathe when things get heavy." He placed it beside Lily's drawing. Same loops. Same gentle slant. He felt his knees weaken as he stared. "Emma," he whispered. Later that night, he sat outside on the porch. The air was cool, stars faint behind drifting clouds. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples, feeling the world tilt between reality and memory. He remembered Emma's laughter, how it used to fill the kitchen when he burned breakfast, how she'd tease him for pretending to know how to dance. She used to say, "Even when I'm gone, you'll still hear me in the little things. Don't shut the world out, Daniel." He thought she meant memories. But now, with Lily's words, the scent, the handwriting, he wasn't so sure anymore. Maybe there were things love could still reach through. Just before midnight, Daniel checked on Lily. She was asleep, hugging her stuffed rabbit, breathing softly. The nightlight cast its tiny stars across her blanket. He turned to leave, but something made him stop. On her nightstand lay a yellow daisy. Fresh, dew on its petals. He hadn't bought flowers in months. He stood frozen for a long time, his chest rising and falling with a slow ache of disbelief. Somewhere deep inside, he felt warmth spread. Not fear, not sadness, but something lighter. Something that made his eyes sting. Maybe love didn't vanish. Maybe it just changed form. And as he closed her door gently, a faint whisper brushed past him, soft, almost like breath. "Thank you for taking care of her." He didn't turn around. He just stood there in the quiet glow of the hallway light, his heart both breaking and healing all at once. The rain started that afternoon, a thin silver sheet whispering against the windows. Daniel sat at the kitchen table with his laptop open, though he hadn't typed a word in half an hour. The steady rhythm of water on the glass matched the slow thud of his pulse. Every time he blinked, he saw the yellow daisy again, the one he'd found on Lily's nightstand the night before. He'd checked the garden that morning. Their daisies had died weeks ago. He rubbed a hand over his eyes and whispered, "I must be losing it." From the hallway came the soft patter of feet. Lily's voice drifted in, half singing, half talking. "Mommy says the rain is good for wishes. Mommy says the sky cries when we forget to." Daniel looked up. She stood there in her red socks, hair tangled from a nap, clutching a drawing pad. Her face glowed with that effortless joy children carry, the kind that refuses to be weighed down by what's missing. He smiled faintly. "That what Mommy said, ho?" Lily nodded. "She said you still keep her favorite mug in the top shelf. She wants you to stop hiding it." Daniel's breath caught. The blue and white mug. It sat exactly where she said, in the cupboard above the sink, the one he never opened anymore. He stood slowly, opened the cabinet, and reached for it. The mug was cool in his hand, a faint chip near the rim where Emma had once dropped it while laughing too hard. He could almost hear her voice again, teasing him about the way he made coffee too strong. He set the mug on the counter and turned to Lily. "How did you know that, sweetheart?" She just smiled and went back to her drawings. That night the house hummed differently. The storm had passed, leaving the air damp and alive. Daniel sat in the living room, a single lamp burning low. Lily had gone to bed hours ago, and the quiet should have comforted him, but it didn't. It felt expectant, like the house itself was listening. He opened the old photo album from the drawer. Emma's handwriting danced across the first page. "For every moment we forget, love remembers." He traced the words with his finger, eyes burning. He remembered the days she'd written it. Her laughter, the smell of lavender, the way she'd winked and said, "Someday you'll need reminding." A faint sound pulled him back. It was coming from the hallway again. Soft steps, then a child's murmur. He rose and followed. Lily's door was cracked open, pale light spilling across the carpet. Her small voice floated through the gap. "Okay, Mommy, I'll tell him." "Yes, I promise I will." Daniel pushed the door wider. Lily was kneeling on her bed, both hands cupped around something invisible. Her eyes were wide, shining in the nightlight's glow. She turned to him with a tiny gasp, then smiled. "Daddy, Mommy says tomorrow you'll know she's really here." He swallowed. "How's that, baby?" "She said she'll send you her song." Her song. The lullaby. The one Emma used to hum every night before sleep. The one Daniel hadn't heard in years. The next day unfolded in ordinary ways. Packing lunch, morning rush, the drive through wet streets. Yet underneath everything was a pulse of anticipation he couldn't shake. When he returned home that afternoon, a gentle breeze met him at the door, carrying that same lavender scent again. He left the groceries on the counter and walked deeper into the living room. The old music box sat there, dusty, wooden, one he packed away in the closet long ago. Its lid was open. Inside, the tiny ballerina spun slowly, turning to a melody that stopped him cold. The lullaby, low, soft, trembling through the room as if played by invisible hands. Daniel's knees almost gave out. He reached for the box, staring at the winding key. It hadn't been turned. He pressed his palm to it. The metal was warm. He whispered her name, once, quietly. "Emma." The melody faltered, then slowed, the ballerina coming to a still. Only the faint scent of lavender remained. He sank to the couch, head in his hands, heart breaking open in a way it hadn't in years. When Lily came home, she found him there, eyes red but smiling faintly. "Daddy," she said softly, "did you hear her song?" He nodded. "Yeah, sweetheart. I heard it." She said, "That means you believe her now." He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. "I think I do." They sat like that for a long time, the light shifting golden through the window, painting the room in quiet warmth. For the first time since Emma's death, Daniel didn't feel completely alone. That evening, after Lily went to bed, he stood in the doorway again, watching her sleep. The night light cast gentle stars across the ceiling. He whispered, "If you can hear me, Em, thank you." And somewhere in the stillness, so faint he almost doubted it, came the soft hum of her lullaby, just a few notes, like a promise carried on air. He closed his eyes and let it wash over him, every ache, every tear, every unspoken word melting into that simple tune. For the first time, the silence in the house didn't hurt. It simply felt full. The next evening, Daniel came home later than usual. The sky had turned the same shade of dusky violet his wife used to love, and as he stepped into the house, the faint smell of lavender candles still lingered in the air, just as she had left it months ago. He had promised himself he wouldn't cry anymore in front of his daughter. But lately, everything reminded him of her. The way Lily tilted her head when she laughed, the soft hum she made when drawing, even the song she hummed in her sleep. He paused by the doorway to Lily's room. The nightlight cast a warm, golden glow across the floor. He heard her voice, soft, giggling, talking to someone. Daniel smiled faintly. Maybe she was playing with her dolls again. But as he leaned closer, he froze. Lily's voice was calm, gentle, almost soothing. And then she paused. There was silence. Then, she listened, as if someone had spoken back. Daniel's heart clenched. He hesitated before pushing the door open, just a few inches. Inside, Lily was sitting cross-legged on her bed, her tablet lying beside her, but she wasn't touching it. In front of her was the small wooden music box that had belonged to her mother. Its lid was open, and the soft melody filled the room, Claire de Lune, her mother's favorite song. Lily looked up and smiled toward the corner of the room. "Mommy said you have to stop skipping dinner." "Daddy," she whispered softly, her eyes bright. "She said your heart hurts when you don't eat." Daniel's breath caught in his throat. He stepped inside, trying to keep his voice steady. "Lily, who are you talking to, sweetheart?" She looked at him innocently. "To Mommy." Then, as if noticing his expression, she frowned. "You can't hear her." He knelt beside her bed. His hands were trembling. "No, baby, I can't." Lily's face softened. "It's okay. She said you'd forget how, but she'll help you remember." The words pierced through him like glass. He tried to smile, but his voice broke. "Remember what, Lily?" She reached for the music box and turned the small silver key again. The melody began to play once more, delicate and slow. "Mommy said this song was your promise song. You played it when you asked her to marry you." Daniel felt the world go still. He hadn't told Lily that. Not once. Not in all these years. He stayed at the box. The tune filled the room with aching familiarity, each note carrying a lifetime of love and loss. Lily continued softly. She said she wanted to make sure you never stopped listening, because when you listen, she's right here. She placed her tiny hand over his chest. "In your heart." And that's when Daniel finally broke. He pulled her into his arms, his shoulders shaking, tears spilling freely. For the first time in months, he didn't try to hide them. He just held his little girl close and let himself feel. Outside, the evening wind brushed against the window pane. The world seemed to hush around them, no sound except the soft ticking of the music box. After a long silence, Lily whispered, "Daddy." "Yes, sweetheart." "She also said you don't have to be scared anymore." He looked at her, eyes red, voice barely a whisper. "Scared of what?" She said, "Of being happy again." Daniel closed his eyes. He could almost hear her voice in that moment, not from the corner of the room, but from deep within his memories. The laughter they shared, the warmth of her hands, the way she used to tell him that love doesn't end, it just changes shape. He looked at Lily, who smiled softly, unaware of how much she had just healed him. And he realized something. Maybe his daughter wasn't talking to ghosts. Maybe she was simply carrying the love he thought he'd lost. That night, after tucking Lily into bed, Daniel sat by her door for a long time, listening to the faint tune from the music box fade into the dark. When it finally stopped, he whispered a quiet thank you. Not into the silence, but into the love that filled it. The next morning, sunlight filtered gently through the curtains, painting soft golden streaks across the floor. Daniel stood by the window, a mug of untouched coffee in his hand, staring out at the quiet street. He hadn't slept much. The music box melody had played on in his mind all night, and so had Lily's words. She said, "You don't have to be scared of being happy again." He turned toward the small wooden box resting on the table beside him. Its carved lid was slightly chipped at the edges, the brass hinge worn from years of opening and closing. His wife, Emily, used to play it every night before bed, a ritual of comfort, a lullaby for the heart. Now, it had become something more. He wasn't sure what to believe in anymore. He didn't think Lily had seen or heard anything supernatural. But maybe, just maybe, children saw love more clearly than adults ever could. He took a deep breath and set his coffee down. Something tugged at him, a quiet instinct he couldn't explain. He found himself climbing the narrow staircase to the attic, a place he hadn't entered since the funeral. The air was cool and still. Dust particles floated in shafts of light, shimmering like faint stars. Old boxes lined the walls, marked winter clothes, baby toys, and one that read Emily's things. Daniel's throat tightened as he knelt before it. He hesitated for a long time before lifting the lid. Inside were pieces of her life, little echoes of who she was. Her favorite scarf, a dried bouquet from their wedding, a faded sketch she'd made of their first apartment, and then an envelope, yellowed, delicate, and sealed with a small red heart sticker. His name was written across it in her looping, familiar handwriting. "For Daniel, open when you're ready." His hands trembled. The words seemed to pulse against his skin. He sat back on the floor, staring at the envelope for a long time before he finally tore it open. Inside was a folded letter. He could still smell her perfume on the paper, faint lavender and vanilla. He began to read. "My love, if you're reading this, it means life has moved in a way we couldn't stop. I don't want you to be sad when you think of me. Promise me that. I know you. You'll carry the world on your shoulders for Lily. You'll try to be both mother and father. But, my love, don't forget to be you. Sing her bedtime songs. Burn the pancakes sometimes. Let her braid your hair for fun, because that's how she'll remember joy. And when you laugh, even when it hurts, that's how I'll live on. There's a music box inside this box. You gave it to me when you proposed. Play it when you miss me, not to cry, but to listen. Each note is a piece of us, stitched into time. And if Lily ever talks to me, believe her. Children remember the sound of love better than anyone. I'll always be where music plays softly. I'll always be in the warmth of your hand when you hold hers. Yours, forever, Emily." Daniel's vision blurred. He couldn't stop the tease this time, and he didn't want to. The attic seemed to breathe around him, the light flickering gently as if the world itself was listening. He pressed the letter to his chest, feeling both the ache and the peace it carried. For months, he'd buried every memory, every photograph, every smile, trying to survive, not live. But now, holding her words, he understood what Lily had meant. Emily wasn't gone. She was woven into everything. The laughter, the lullabies, even the silence between heartbeats. He stayed there for hours, reading the letter again and again until he could recite every word by heart. When he finally came downstairs, Lily was sitting at the kitchen table with crayons scattered everywhere. She was drawing a family, 3 stick figures holding hands under a bright yellow sun. "Daddy," she said cheerfully, "I drew Mommy too." Daniel smiled through his tears and sat beside her. "She looks beautiful, sweetheart." She said, "You found a letter," Lily said simply, still coloring. Daniel froze for a second. "How did you?" Lily shrugged. "She told me this morning." She said, "Now you can smile again." He didn't know what to say. He just reached over and pulled her into a hug, his heart full, breaking and mending all at once. In that quiet morning light, something in him shifted, Not an ending, but a beginning. He realized that grief and love weren't opposites. They were partners, hand in hand. And through his daughter, through her laughter and faith, he had found a way back home. That night, before bed, Daniel wound up the music box one last time. He placed it on the nightstand and watched Lily drift into sleep. The melody filled the room, wrapping around them like a soft whisper, a bridge between what was lost and what still remained. And for the first time since she'd gone, Daniel whispered into the stillness, not a goodbye, but a promise. Thank you for staying with us, always. Weeks passed. Autumn slowly bled into winter, and with it came soft mornings filled with frost on the windows and the distant scent of pine. Daniel and Lily had begun to find a new rhythm, not the one they used to have, but something gentler, quieter. The house no longer felt like a museum of grief. It felt lived in again. The music box now sat on the living room shelf, beside a small photo of Emily. Every night, Lily would wind it up once before bedtime, so Mommy can hear her say goodnight, she'd whisper. Daniel had stopped asking her how she knew these things. Some truths didn't need explaining. He had started cooking again. Not perfect, but good enough for Lily to giggle over. They made pancakes that were slightly too crispy and laughed when the syrup dripped everywhere. He caught himself laughing too, real laughter, and realized how long it had been since the sound filled the walls. But it wasn't until one Sunday morning that everything came full circle. The sun had risen soft and pale, painting gold across the kitchen tiles. Lily was at the table, humming Clair de Lune while drawing in her notebook. Daniel poured her orange juice, pretending not to notice how closely she resembled her mother, that same absent-minded tilt of her head, that same way of seeing beauty in ordinary things. He sat across from her. "What are you working on, sweetie?" She grinned, turning the paper around. "It's for Mommy." The page showed a bright blue sky with clouds shaped like hearts. 3 figures stood beneath it, a little girl, her dad, and a woman with soft yellow hair, smiling down from the clouds. "She said it's okay now," Lily whispered. "She said we don't have to be sad every time we think of her." Daniel's eyes filled instantly. "She said that." Lily nodded, folding the paper neatly. "She said love isn't gone, Daddy. It just moves." Then she held up the folded drawing and smiled faintly. She said this is her way of saying goodbye. Daniel felt a quiet ache spread through him. Not sharp, not heavy, but deep and warm, like sunlight finding its way through clouds. He reached across the table, brushing a strand of hair from Lily's face. "Then let's send it to her, him," he said softly. Lily's eyes lit up. "How?" Daniel thought for a moment, then smiled. "Let's let the sky carry it." They drove to the field just outside town, the same one where he and Emily used to take walks in the evenings, back when Lily was still small enough to ride on his shoulders. The air was cold, their breaths rising in little clouds. The field was wide and open, filled with tall golden grass swaying under the pale light. Daniel brought a small white balloon. Lily tied the folded drawing to it with a bit of red ribbon. Before letting go, she closed her eyes and whispered, "We love you, Mommy." Daniel added quietly, "Always." Then together, they released the string. The balloon rose slowly, gliding into the wind. It caught the sunlight and shimmered, climbing higher and higher until it was no more than a speck against the blue. Lily watched until it disappeared. Then she turned to Daniel, smiling through tears. She caught it. He didn't doubt it for a second. He just knelt down, wrapped his arms around her, and held her as the winter wind brushed past them, carrying the faintest trace of lavender, Emily's scent, through the air. And in that small, fleeting moment, Daniel knew something certain. They weren't alone anymore. That night, as Lily slept, Daniel sat by her bedside again. The music box was playing, slow and sweet, the same melody that had once felt like goodbye but now sounded like home. He looked around the room. The toys, the drawings, the soft glow of a nightlight. It no longer felt haunted by absence. It felt full. He whispered, "Thank you for teaching me how to listen again." And in the silence that followed, he felt peace. The kind of peace that doesn't erase the pain, but makes it bearable. As the final notes of the music faded, Daniel glanced toward the window. A single snowflake drifted down, landing gently on the glass before melting away. He smiled. Then he turned off the light, leaving only the quiet hum of the music box and the steady sound of his daughter's breathing. A lullaby for the living, a promise for the lost, and the gentle truth that love, once given, never truly leaves.